Hi, I'm Stuart Clayton and welcome to Lick Library. This lesson is going to be the first in a series on slap and pop technique. This is one of the funkiest ways of playing the bass, and it's a style that most bass players like to dip their toes into. So we're going to look at the absolute basics of this technique to get started. The first thing you need to consider really is the position of your arm over the bass. Now I like to play with my arm kind of at a 45-degree angle, so it comes in like this. And my thumb then rests over the string so that it's parallel to the string, so I'm able to hit any of the strings neatly without affecting either of the ones to the side of that. Now, I tend to keep the bass in the same position, roughly, when I'm standing as when I'm sitting. So I set the strap length roughly to this position. It does go a little bit lower sometimes. And you'll find that if you manage to keep that position the same, all the angles in your arm won't change from you're practicing at home sitting down and when you're out on a gig and you want to use your slap licks. Some bass players will play with the bass really quite low down, and if you do that, you'll find that the angles in your arm are very different, and you'll be approaching the string with your thumb at more of a right angle. Now this is quite good for slapping on the E string. But you'll find that when you come to hit some of the inner strings, it's quite difficult to hit them without sounding the other ones. So it's just something to bear in mind when you're trying to work out at what point to play the bass when you're slapping. Okay, now the sound that you're going for really is this sort of metallic, punchy tone. And that's really achieved by the string bouncing off of the final few frets of the fretboard. So if you're striking the string just beyond the last fret on your bass, that should be the sound that you're going for. Now you might find that if you've not done this before, you'll develop a blister on the side of your thumb. I strike the string with the side of the thumb on the knuckle bone, and this initially leads to a blister, but once that heals, you'll develop a callus there, which is just an area of hard skin, and that will protect your thumb from suffering while you're playing the slap stuff. Okay, so we're going to start off with a very basic exercise. We're just going to play open E strings. This kind of thing. We're going to play 4 bars of that, round twice, and then stop. This is just to get used to hitting the E string to begin with. Okay, so that's a very basic slap exercise, just concentrating on the low E. Now, we're going to look at how we can shorten those notes using the left hand. The left hand plays a very important part in the slap and pop technique, and in later lessons we'll look at how to use it to actually create notes and ghost notes. But for now, we're going to use it as a muting device. So what we're going to do is we're going to slap a note and then we're going to shorten it with the left hand. Like so. Now, what you might find is that depending on where you put your fingers, you might end up with some harmonics that you don't want. Like that. You can hear that there's a really strong harmonic at the 7th fret, and again there's one at the 5th fret as well. So I tend to slap with my my left hand so that the finger that's doing the most of the muting is kind of over the 6th fret, and that's ideal because there's not really a strong harmonic around that point. Okay, so now we're going to do the same exercise again, but we're going to shorten all the notes. Okay, let's move on and look at hitting the other strings. Now, as a general rule of thumb, with the slap and pop technique, you'll generally be slapping the A and E strings and popping the D and G, and we'll get to the pop in a little while. But for the moment, we're going to slap all 4 strings because it's really good practice just to be able to do it on all 4 of them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play 4 notes on each open string. You'll notice that I'll probably mute the last note of each bar just so that there's a clean transition from one string to the next. Okay, so it's just going to be hitting the E, A, D and G strings one at a time. Okay, so that's a great exercise for target practice and just hitting each string individually. Now you should really take your time to make sure you get this as accurate as possible before you move on. Okay, we'll look now at doing the same thing, but we're going to apply that muting technique with the left hand. We're going to apply that to every note on every string. So same thing again, but we're going to mute every note. Or not mute it, we're going to shorten it with the left hand. Okay, now that muting technique will really come in useful when you're playing slap grooves. Whether you shorten a note or leave it to ring for its full length is really down to you as a player. Quite often it won't be dictated in the music and it'll be left down to your own discretion. We're going to move on now and look at some fretted notes. We're going to use a C, A, G and an F, and we're just going to use the same techniques as we've used so far. 1 note per beat, and here we go. Okay, so that's just a quick exercise to get you used to using actual fretted notes, and you can play a million different variations on that. We're going to look now at using the same technique. We're going to play 8th notes, so we're going to double everything up a little bit. And we're going to play a very simple figure, which is just root, octave, 7th, and 5th. So we're just going to be playing this kind of figure. We're going to do that in A, D, and E in a 4-bar progression. Here we go. Let's now do the same line but apply the muting technique to every note. You'll see that this results in a very different feel. Okay, so now we've looked at the basic slap and the basic mute that we do with the left hand. We're going to incorporate the pop into the mix now. And now this is simply where you hook your finger, the first or second finger, it doesn't really matter, under the top string, the G or the D occasionally, and you just snap notes like this. Okay, so we're going to start with a simple exercise that is just going to be root and octave. We're going to move from D to C, F to G. Okay, we're just going to play root and octave, 8th notes, 4-bar pattern. Here we go. Now that exercise is really good for illustrating the spin that the wrist needs to do when executing this technique. And you'll notice that my arm barely moves at all when I'm playing this kind of stuff, and it's really good for you to develop a kind of twisting motion in your wrist. If you can imagine holding a bottle of water or beer or something and just shaking it up, that's the kind of motion that you use when using this technique. And while it's important to pivot the wrist, you don't want your thumb coming away from the strings too far, because remember, it's got to come back to hit the next note as well. So anyway, the motion that you're looking for, as you can see, most of it comes from the wrist. My arm's barely moving at all. Okay, let's look at that last exercise again, and we're going to apply the muting technique to the popped notes and see what difference that makes to the line. Okay, finally, we're going to look at another root octave slap and pop line. This one's going to be around a D, and we're going to use a chromatic approach up to D, and then we're going to use some scale tones from the D natural minor scale. Basic slap and pop technique once again. You could practice this using muting technique on the slaps or the pops or both, and just see what a difference it makes to the feel and the sound. Okay, I'm going to play it without any muting. But you can do it with the muting as well. Okay, so that covers the basics of the slap and pop technique. Just to recap, we've looked at the actual slap itself, using the left hand mute and using either the first or the second finger to pop notes. I hope that's explained the technique in some detail for you. I'll see you in the next lesson.